Hello everyone, welcome back to Space Tour Live Thursday Night Talks. Thank you for tuning in. If you're tuning in live via our YouTube channel, if you're tuning in via Zoom, a very warm welcome to you as well. And today is another interesting talk. We're going to be exploring the current challenges faced by the world's forests, including the forest as a natural resource, planning, natural hazards, and all the rest of it. And we're joined in the house by Claudia Blagu. How are you?
Hi there. Nice to be here, and yeah, we're really looking for talking about this. I'm super excited. So yeah.
We are also extremely excited to speak to you about tonight's talk. And to everyone tuning in on YouTube, please remember it's a very make sure if you have any questions throughout the talk to drop them in the comment section below on YouTube, and Claudia can get to answering them during our conversation. So just a little bit of background as to what you do, Claudia, in the industry you're in. Um, can you give the audience a bit of an introduction as to what you do?
Sure. So apart from staying in my kitchen now, I'm a digitalization manager, and that sounds very fancy when you say it out
Yep.
loud. But in fact, it's not that fancy. What I do on my daily job is that I take care about everything from Excel, Microsoft tools, to very high cool softwares like the ones using satellite information. What I do is actually to implement projects like this in order to help my colleagues to do their work more easy, much faster, and so they can enjoy some relaxing time at home. So yeah, that's in very short words what I do on a daily basis, besides, giving trainings or helping them to understand what they can do with the information that they have in their softwares, or how they can think about new ways of using the data that is coming from other softwares, like, I don't know, from finance department or from sales or even from HR. So I deal with a lot of digital world, let's say, nowadays. But I didn't start it like this. So that
Yeah.
was a really nice transition from where I started.
And just to give everyone tuning in now on YouTube a little bit of an overview as to what we're going to be talking about tonight.
So yeah, I'm working in the forest industry. I'm working for a forest investment, and the general idea that I got is that the forestry itself is not something that everyone knows what you can do and what digital tools you can use in forestry. So I thought it's a really nice way to make some awareness. So we are going to talk today about digital tools in forestry, how space is also contributing to the forestry, how we can improve the way that we are using the forest or we safeguard them. So this kind of stuff that, it's improving also the business. It's also, for some of us, it's also a business, not only
Yeah.
a nice place where to go. So we're going to talk about that.
Awesome. I think we're all really looking forward to it. Just a reminder, if you're tuning in now on YouTube, if you have any questions at all for myself or Claudia throughout our talk, just drop them in the comment section below, and we'll try and get to them before the end of the talk. So we're going to be talking about satellite imagery in forestry. So when we say forestry, what is that about?
So most of the people, when they hear the word forest, they think about, the trees.
Trees,
They
yeah.
go and they go there, they see a pretty animal, they relax, or they go on a picnic. But
Yeah.
it's not only that. So when you own a forest, when you're an owner, you need to do some works about it. You need to take care of it. You need to plan activities. You need to harvest trees, because in the end, all the wood products are coming from the forest. So it's also about that. So forestry means not only having a forest with trees, but it also means all the activities that are related to that, the planning, the harvesting, the logistics that takes care of it, and so on. So it's a lot of accumulated activities.
Great. And what impact does that have to do with day-to-day lives, like people tuning in, watching, and now, why should they be concerned about how satellite imagery, specifically in the forests, is impacting their lives?
Well, if you ask me, I mean, this is a personal opinion. I think that forestry itself as an industry is one of the latest that receive like improvements in digital environment. So we are lacking a little bit on the, let's say, modern ways of using technology in the field. And what they were doing before, till recent, is that they were going in the field day by day, time consuming. You have like forest rangers guarding the forest. And when it comes to satellites itself, so we are speaking about the things that are now in the sky, we suddenly have access to a tool that offers us a very broad image of our property. For example, if you have the property, let's think about a country. So if the state owns the forest and you want to monitor that forest, it's much easier, much simpler, and much faster to do that by the means of forestry.
Does that, when you refer to forest owners, it could of course be states
Of course.
and governments, and how much of that is actually like smaller property owners who own forests? Are they impacted by it as well?
Of course, I mean you can apply the products from satellite imagery to basically whatever dimension you have as your property. Depending on the type of let's say image that you use, you can get benefits if you have looking at a very small scale. For example, let's say that you have a plot that you want to monitor over time. It's much easier to do it like this, but it can also work the same for very big chunks of plots. For example, I don't know, we've seen a lot lately, for example, the forest fires in the Amazon or things like that. So it's much easier, much faster to look at that, and you can cover very large portion of the planet with the satellites.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. That it's even helping out like smaller owners who are not that connected, maybe, as well as the larger states and governments. Little bit more about kind of your role as a digitalization manager, because lots of people in the audience might not know what that means, especially in this industry. So, what role do you have in kind of helping these digital tools, helping the end user, if you like, and what role do you play in that?
So basically, I'm the first one to test it, the first one to listen to what pain they have.
Yeah.
So they come and they stay with me during the whole process, talking about what problems do they want to solve, what issues they have on their daily life at work. And what I do after that is that I take their requirements and their problems and try to find a fitted solution for that. Is it something that we can solve with, I don't know, with a table? Is it something that I need an image for that? Is it something that it requires a special software or an entire team? I do that for them. So I'm the person facing the business need with, let's say, the solution. And I do that on a daily job. And it requires to understand a little bit, a lot more than just listen to what problems they face.
So, what type of problems do these forest owners come to you with?
Well, it's a lot. I mean, usually when we go into the forest, we look at how we can better measure the trees, how we can inventory them, how we can monitor them. Do we have biodiversity that is in our forest? Do we want to monitor that? Do we have a tool to help us to monitor the health and safety issues? Or do we want to know the location of our employees, for example, in any given point of time in our property, because we want to make sure that they are safe? So there are quite a wide range of issues that usually they are coming with. Most of the time they are connected with the operations that are happening in the forest, so like harvesting or logistics. But we also have like, I don't know, ideas where we can improve the things that we are doing, for example, how to better inventory the tree. We are doing projects where we see the evolution of a forest over time, so we can better assess the type of growth that they have, the tree species distribution, or even we are looking at areas where we want to, for example, plant new baby trees.
Yeah.
And then we monitor them. So we kind of want to have a tool to do that instead of, going, for example, with a book on the field like this one. I'm going to go with my phone. So I don't need to do that handwriting. I'm going to use my phone and take pictures that are located somewhere. So they are tagged. And then I can put that on some maps. And then later on, I can analyze that from the office. So this is kind of the daily thing that we are doing. And also depending on the country, because different countries have different legislations and you have different rules. So depending on the country that you are obliged to do different stuff. But in general, it's all about planning, the best way to plan. But since we're speaking about forestry, you don't even plan for, a very small period of time. So usually the plan for a forest is something that you do for 100 years even.
Yeah, wow. No, it's fascinating to hear about like the role satellite imagery is helping to play in the application of forests. Because I know over the past few Thursday night talks we've had on Space Door Live, a lot of our space experts have spoken about agriculture, and everyone can sort of relate to agriculture because it's, of course, you can link it to the food you have, and you can link it to the farmland that you always see around you. And especially for people living in the UK, there is a lot of there's a big agriculture industry. Whereas forests, you think, and like, how does that link to space? It raises questions like, what has forests got to do with space? So it's really interesting to learn about. Like, it is important as well. And just going on from that is how much on a day-to-day basis do you actually use the satellite imagery itself? Like, is it important, and how important is it?
Well, that depends on the thing that I'm doing, but definitely all the maps that I'm using, they have a satellite imagery as a background. And why it's that important is because you want to see how the forest it looks from the above. It helps you to understand if the forest is held, it's in good shape, if your plantation is evolving, or it's even help you to understand if you have a natural disaster, how much impact it had on your property, how you can better recover from that, or if you have an insect attack, for example, how you can better mitigate that. So for the people that they don't know how to relate to that, you have to imagine that. So the forest, it's currently the trees are the most let's say bigger organisms that they generate oxygen and they stock carbon.
Yeah.
So for that, even we need to look at this, how we can better monitor, how we can better manage it in a way that can ensure that for the long term it's going to stay here and it's going to help the planet and ourselves, of course, and the kids that we are going to have and their grandkids and so on. So it has a lot of implication. And yes, I agree with you. Most of the time when you think about satellite imagery or products that are coming from satellites, people relate a lot to agriculture or I don't know, surveillance, for example. They don't know that you can actually apply it to a lot of other industries, and forestry is one of them.
Definitely, yeah. Now, not to steal any ideas from you, but how much of this translates to business value, stuff, information, whether it's digital information that you can actually sell to these users at the end of the day?
Well, whenever you speak with a business leader, he doesn't actually know all the details of his property or of the assets that the company is investing in. And most of the time, they don't have the full overview of the property. So the thing, or I think that the coolest thing that the satellite imagery is actually bringing new is the fact that you can suddenly monitor an overview, the whole property much faster. So you can also monitor like a history, you can have like a history of your property. And from that point, you can do evaluation, so you can see if your property or your investment is growing or decreasing depending on how your forest looks. So it brings a lot new information. For example, if you have damages to your forest, then you need to act fast. So that makes a big impact on your property. You can lose a lot of money if you don't act on time. So it brings a little bit of other values, So that's the thing that is changing in the business a little bit. Uh, of course, that depending on the objective of each company, you can look at a more sustainable way of managing your property, ways how to improve the productivity, ways how you can take better and informed decisions. Because by applying this, monitoring on a larger scale on your property, you can actually project. You can project what will happen to your forest in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. And then you can take decisions like, I'm going to do some work of maintenance here, but then I'm going to harvest here. And then you see it on a map how this evolves. And it also helps you to do that. So far, well, till satellites were introduced to this industry, people were actually doing all the planification and all the, let's say, the inventories and all the evaluation of their property, basically by going there and taking sample plots. So they were taking one sample plot here, one here, and one here, and then they were extrapolating that. Now with satellite imagery, basically you can take sample plots, whatever, you can actually do it for your whole property at once. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go to every point in your property. You can do like just some checks and some calibrations.
Has there ever been a time or a case where you've kind of shown all these values to a property owner or a forest owner, and they've either just been shocked by it or been like, where has this been in my entire life? Has there ever been an incident like that?
Well, I remember a lot of funny stories about this, and I have a couple of examples. So one that pops into my head was in one particular situation where we didn't know exactly the spread and the fragmentation of all of the property that we had. And the moment that we put it and we put a satellite image in the background, suddenly you were seeing all the properties all over. And then when you were looking in details, you were seeing different maturity of each property. So you were seeing trees, but you were seeing also nurseries. You were seeing like something of agricultural land and so on. So it was such a shock for the investment manager when he saw that. He said, I only saw it on the tables, I was seeing endless rows of Excel. But the moment that we put that on a satellite image, he was like, oh, I cannot believe that that's our property. So he was really happy. And he used that images. I believe that for 1 year, in any presentation that he was given internally in the company, he was using that image all over again. So there are many situations where whenever I introduce this thing to the business leaders, usually they have a little bit of a smile saying, I never knew that we can actually do that. So there are a lot of things that they don't know, because most of the time they only look, they are focused on the business plan, and then that's fine. But then it's also our jobs, like I don't know, data analysts, data scientists, digital analysts, digital managers, to bring that into attention.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great that you're actually helping these people out. And one other thing I read about yourself actually is you've been involved in so many environmental projects in your experience. And that's something we are a huge advocate of that space. So as environmentally producing all of our merchandise and whatever we do, we want to make sure we have the smallest carbon footprint possible. And just wanted to find out more about, like, what has driven your passion to worry so much about the environment, and all of these projects you've taken about in your day-to-day role. They're driven by the environmental factor, aren't they?
Yeah, so I think it has to do with the way that I grew up. So I
Yeah.
grew up in a farm
Okay.
with my grandparents, and because of that, I don't know, I always felt connected to the environment around me.
Yeah.
That's why I went to do geography. So I'm also a geographer, and I was so passionate about maps that I actually became a cartographer. So I don't know, I always been passionate about natural science, about the environment, because I feel like if we don't care about it and we don't do anything about it, well, it's our home. We
Yeah.
don't have another one, so we have to take care. Even if it's a little bit of small contribution that we have, it still does make a difference. So yes, I've been involved in. I think I don't even recall the number of projects that I've been involved. Most of them in my country, where I'm from Romania, and I always try to find, even when I'm taking a job, to find a connection to the natural science and to find a connection where my job is actually contributing to the sustainability goals or to make the planet a better world. So
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really inspiring. Um, what are the kind of day-to-day things that kind of inspire you, or what the people you meet? What kind of things do they say that make you want to continue doing your role?
yeah, I'm laughing
Must-
because usually when people they talk with me, it's like, can you fix my computer? But it's not only that. The thing that drives me, it's whenever I deliver a product, whenever I do something, and then I see, like the spark in the eyes of the person that receives it, and say,
Yeah,
and after a couple of days or a couple of weeks, I reconnect with that person and I ask him, how did it go? Did it help you? And say, yeah, now I don't have to stay 2 weeks to do this report. Now I can do it in 2 clicks. That's something that gives me a lot of motivation, and also helps me to think about solutions that can improve their life. So I think it's also that, but also the fact that whenever I apply something from my knowledge to the softwares that I deliver, to the solutions that I deliver,
yeah,
is that I have the feeling that it's connected a little bit with the property that we take care of it, with the forest that we work in, and I see that my work it's also reflecting on the results that they have in the field, and that's a huge motivation for me. I used to work before this in an agricultural company, so I do relate with what you said before with the agriculture, and there the motive that drive me quite a lot was the fact that every decision that I was making, every recommendation that I was giving to my colleagues related to the agriculture works that they were doing or the plantations that they were doing was immediately seen. So the thing that we were doing, I was seeing if I was doing something right in a couple of months.
yeah.
In forestry is not like that. A decision that I take today, probably my kids or their kids, we're gonna see it. So it's not that easy.
Yeah, definitely. You spoke a little bit about your journey on how you studied geography and then you were involved in agriculture, and now, of course, you're a digitalization manager in forestry. Tell us a little bit more about your journey of how it all, of course, you said you grew up on a farm and that kind of inspired your interest in preserving our only home. But tell us a little bit more about your journey on how you ended up where you are.
So I ended up where I am. It's a little bit of funny story. I was working in agriculture, and then my manager was living in Africa. So because he was living, I had to do something about it because yeah, it happened. So I called a friend, asked him about, do you know someone that is looking for someone that knows geographic information system, the GIS maps and so on, because I'm good at it and I want to do something about it. And he called me the next day saying, I think that we are looking for someone. So this is how I ended up in my current role. But I didn't start it as a digitalization manager from the beginning. I started
Yeah,
as a GIS analyst. So working a lot with maps, working a lot with data, with satellite images and so on. And I just grew up in the role. I basically try to help out with a lot of other solutions connected to my job. So that transformed a little bit into a broader responsibility.
And for people who are watching who might be interested in forestry or satellite imagery in the forest industry, whether they might be doing something with GIS themselves, what kind of advice would you have to them?
To be curious. That's the first thing that crossed my mind. Be curious, be connected. And then, of course, you need to always think that the things that you're creating, they bring value. So we don't, it's really, when you work in a business, so you don't do research, it's a little bit different, the situation, because the things that you're creating, the things that you're working on your daily job, they need to create value. That means that they need to either help your colleagues to improve their work, or even, I don't know, save the company some money, or improve the way that they are doing certain stuff. So you need to always try to think, if I do this, what value will I add? Because that's very important, and I had to learn it after a couple of years of experience, that this is what drives the business usually, the value that you create. And of course that you need to always learn new stuff. So also be curious about things that are around you. It's amazing how the technology evolved. When I was a student, for example, satellite imagery wasn't such a big thing.
Yeah.
I might not look that old, but I am. And it wasn't that a big thing, you know. People were knowing about it. They knew that you can do some stuff with it, but it wasn't that popular. So now, when I'm looking back, I'm looking at things that I never thought that will be possible. So you always have to be curious. You always have to be connected. And I think that the best advice that I can give, try to be as connected as much as possible with groups that are professional groups working in different areas, companies that they do development in different areas. Try to be as curious as you can, because that's just going to help you on the longer term.
Yeah, that's great advice for any young GIS experts or aspiring experts listening, is to always be curious. Now, the other thing I really wanted to touch on was, you said that you actually helped found the Natural Park Vacaresti in Bucharest. So to anyone who's just tuning in or hasn't wasn't here from the start, Claudia is actually joining us on Space to Live from Romania. So there's a 2-hour difference in time. So once again, a big thank you for joining us at a time which is close to bedtime over there. But a little bit more about kind of the role you played and what happened, like how did you end up involved in actually founding the natural park in Vacaresti in Bucharest?
So you mentioned earlier, I've been involved in many environmental projects, and
Yeah.
part of that was actually being both a volunteer and a contributing member to different NGOs in Romania. And one of the NGO that I'm working, I think that it's already 12 years or something like that. It's called Cogaion Association. I've been a member of them for quite a lot of years now. Always working on this side of mapping, GIS, satellite imagery, of course, and trying to look at things or projects that we were doing from this angle. So we actually founded 2 parks. One, it's a little bit smaller. It's a national park, the smallest one in Romania. It's I think a couple of hours for driving from Bucharest, from the capital. That was many years ago. And I think it was 5-6 years ago, There was an article in National Geographic that was writing about one particular area in Bucharest that was deserted. It was like industrial construction that they did, like a pond that they tried to build, but it wasn't that successful during the communist period. They abandoned the project and they just leave it like that. And what happened in there, because it was a big lake, the vegetation started to grow. There were a lot of animals that started to pop in, like a sanctuary. So every like semi-wild animals that they were in the city, they were finding a refugee there. And this article in National Geographic just made awareness of that situation. The civil society started to act and requested to build like a natural park and to make like a protected area. And I was part of the team that started to do the documentation and all the necessary steps in front of the ministry to get this stated. It was quite a long journey. It took us 2 years to get this declared. And my role particularly into that was to make all the mapping documentation related to that place. So finding all the images of the place, finding all the maps, finding documentation in every written things related to the things that were projected to be done there, when they were built, what was the status, trying to identify how much area the water is covering, how much area the trees are covering, the concrete areas and so on, trying to put on the map even the little trees, so we have a better understanding what we are facing. So I did all that documentation together with my colleagues. And I was the person that actually deposited in front of the ministry the whole documentation, of very long set of documents. And in the end, it resulted to this park to be declared a natural park. And it's quite in the middle of the city.
Great. And how is the park doing now?
Well, not that good.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, 1.5 years or almost 2 years ago, the government decided to establish like a central administration for the natural protected areas. Unfortunately, that also meant a little bit of stopping the administration with different NGOs that were handling different protected areas in the country. So now the park is doing really well from the perspective that it is still a natural park. People are more aware. There are a lot of activities happening inside the park. Mm-hmm. However, there are a lot of administrative stuff that are not still finalized. So we are basically waiting now.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's still great to hear your story about that, and the fact that you still carry to fight on as an environmentalist. It's so inspiring, especially for for our younger audience listening into Space Alive. Is you will face kind of pushback from different places, but it's just a case of fighting on, and all of the work you've done is truly inspiring. And listening to it, of how you carried on and continued your role as a role model in the environmental industry is great. It's great to hear about. Now, I think we are nearing the end of our talk. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Just one final question is for our audience, is for those people who don't really know much about forests and the role they play in our lives and how it links also satellite imagery. What advice, and if someone's curious on learning more about it, how would you tell them to go about finding out more about the industry?
Well, if you're not in a major that involves natural science or even forestry, you can start documenting yourself FAO. I find it really useful. So the Food Organization and Agriculture, they do have a section for forestry, and there is ton of material and tons of information that they offer. And I think it's a really good place to go, as well as FSC, which is actually the organism that certifies the sustainable management of the forest. They have a lot of information about that. And I think that another source that I find it, where I'm not also a forester as a formation, so I had to learn also a lot of stuff. One another pieces that I found really useful was also the WWF program. They have a section also about forestry where they say what they do actually from the angle of protecting, so from the environmentalist point of view. And I think that, yeah, that's about it. If you're not having a major in forestry or anything related to natural science, that those organisms are the ones that they are having best practices, a lot of credibility when it comes to the things that are happening globally and so on. And of course, there are a lot of things happening with the monitoring programs from NASA, for example. So there is a lot of material out there on the web that you can actually take advantage of it.
Great, thank you so much for that. And if you are watching this at a later date on YouTube, just comment in the section below if you have any questions for Claudia, and we can hopefully get in touch with you at a later date. Or if you specifically want to get in touch with Claudia about something, if you found something really, really interesting, please do leave something in the comment section below. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I've learned so much, and I'm sure the audience has too. We've really, really enjoyed it. A big thank you, Claudia, for joining us.
Thank you also for inviting me. I have to admit that I was a little bit nervous, so I do hope that I made it as clear as possible. Anyhow, if you have questions, just pop them in the YouTube and we can get back to you.
Definitely. Once again, thank you so much for joining us on Space Door Live. I hope you guys, if you're in the UK, have had a good half term. Claudia, I hope you have a good night in Romania. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you missed any of our other talks or our roundup early on Tuesday this week, make sure you go and catch up on our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you guys next week, same time, same place, with another space expert. Until then, stay safe and goodbye. See you later, Claudia. Thank you so much.